Prologue: the story of pilot Kurt Otto. 6 years ago. Bismarck's sinking. May 27, 1941. Kurt Otto point of view. All fueled up, you should have just enough fuel to make it to the southern tip of Italy. From there, you'll need one more refueling before you can make it to North Africa. The ground cruise manager, leader/organizer, assures me, while I leaned against the engine cowling of my F4 TRO, BF 109, staring out intensely at the other pilots around me, who I am to be joining on the endeavor. All of them, only 16 to 18 or in their early 20s. I'm one of two in my mid-20s. 24. Only the squadron leader being older than I. When I signed up to fight, I didn't dream for myself to get shipped out, to fight in the dry and humid sands of North Africa. I complained aloud, making my complaints known. My squadron leader patting me on the shoulder as he walked past me and the ground crew manager. We're fighting to take North Africa from the English. Once we push them out, the Mediterranean is ours, further weakening our enemies' holds. Think of it less of a fool's errand, and more of a strategical necessity. Continuing off towards the bulk of our boys, all dressing into their uniform, packing, ensuring their chutes are good and ready for use, just in case. Stepping forwards, looking around the grounds manager, I watched as my squadron leader gathered the boys around. All but me, I was kept in the loop, more so than the rest. I knew the mission before it ever began. Crossing my arms. Strategic my ass. The only reason German boots are finding ground in Africa is because the Kingdom of Italy can't fight for shit. Maybe if they could build a tank with more than rivets and actually tried to build radar before the war began, they'd have one already. I complained, looking back onto my plane. By now the grounds manager had walked off to assist the new driver of the fuel truck. Immediately I take notice that there are 3 250 kilograms bombs mounted onto my aircraft. Immediately I comment, utterly baffled by the sight. What the hell dash? I look out towards every aircraft in the air wing. They're all set up this way. What are we? Sturzkampfflugzeugs? Stukas, an FW-190 air group, parked along the grass airfield nearby our own, in earshot to me, began huddling up near by a military radio station set up outside, under camouflage netting. I glance over towards them, hearing something that piqued my interest. They've surrounded her. Damn, she's just out of aircraft strike range too. One spoke, sounding rather invested, bummed out by the ordeal. Yeah, no kidding, she's on her own now. God be willing, they'll spare her life. Only capturing her. Another spoke, rather saddened by the situation. I turn, beginning to walk towards them, putting my black and wool, leather air-wing coat on as I approached, revealing an iron cross, among other things pinned to the side of it. Are you kidding? That's out of the question. Didn't you hear? She sunk their beloved flagship a few days ago, don't you remember? Another spoke. I stop behind them, while the radio goes off the walls with traffic. Something serious was happening. Speaking in a rather demanding manner over the young men. Why are you huddling up around the radio? You know it's a radio operator's job to listen and relay the messages to the airbase? Not the pilots. I remind them, scolding them in a sense. They all turn around. None of them could have been more than 19 years old at most. No sign of fear or sense of authority, as they explain to me their excuse. Sorry, sir. We weren't trying to do anything nefarious. It's just, we heard the radio going off about a naval battle off the northwest tip of Frank Dash, interrupting them. My clear confusion, written on my face. Naval battle? Why concern yourself with something like that? All due respect, sir. But Bismarck was caught by the British in an ambush. It seems she's been caught alone on her way back to France for repairs after her engagement with Hood. She needs help. One explains to me, sounding rather invested as he did. I glance from them, onto the radio, listening, by chance alone. The radio continues upon what it was they'd told me. Static Bismarck, static, coordinates. Ambushed by the Royal Na, static air support dash. I look onto them, complaining and scolding them. You're the strike force, are you not? Why haven't you gotten in the air to assist her? She's asking for air support, That's the entire point of a strike force, to do the tasks that fighter and bomber task forces are too busy to do. We want to, sir. B, but she's too far out of range. We could reach her to assist, but we'd be without fuel to return. We'd have to ditch in the English Channel or dash, continuing, explaining the details onto me. But I zone out, ignoring the details. I had heard enough. If the FW-190 can't make it there and back on one tank of fuel, then BF-109s certainly can't do it. The FW-190 has around 500 miles of range. BFS have roughly 370 to 400 depending on load and variant. I think, seeing the details inside my head laid out before me. I see, and about the BF-110 task forces? Where's the closest air wing of them? Any in range of Bismarck? I ask, aware that we do have a few task forces of long-range strike aircraft, known as BF-110s. But most are being used against British mainland. Belgium, sir, or actively flying runs over the British mainland, sir, out of range. One answers, behind me in the distance, a few of my planes start, coughing to life with a trail of flames exiting their exhaust. Shouting over them, my air wing leader alerts me. Kurtz! Hurry up, we're setting out in less than 3 minutes. Instead of responding to my leader, I respond to the boys in front the radio, as I turned, and began walking towards my aircraft. I see. Walking with a shadow over my face, once a soldier, a tanker, now a pilot, both professions, I've been forced to watch my fellow man fight, die, lay down their lives. Sometimes their loss was in vain, other times, necessity for the victory, etc. And no matter how many I watched perish, it doesn't erase the feelings inside of my apparition. 7 minutes later. Finally, it's my turn to take off, watching as the youngest in our air wing lifts off the ground and climbs after the squadron that travels off eastward towards the southernmost tip of Italy. As planned. Listening to my in-cockpit radio, as it's filled with radio traffic, different conversations, all of equal importance across the many fronts. But I'm only focusing and listening to one, pertaining to the developments of Bismarck's situation. Finally, higher command has made the final decision, how they are to assist the pinned-down battleship. This is Karl Donitz. My orders are to be heard not only in the Iron Blood Navy, but to all air wings thinking of assisting the stricken vessel, Bismarck. Do not engage, do not lend aid. I, like many others, wish to save our beloved flagship, but to do so, we'll need to sacrifice half the Navy, and a portion of our air wings to get it done. I know these words may fall on deaf ears to some, and to those, I beg of you to listen. The nation's surface fleet is weak in numbers as it is. If we cripple it any further, to save one ship dash, zoning out, switching my radio, not off, but to focus in on specific frequencies. Abandoning a soldier, beyond saving, is commonplace in any war, on any side. We avoid doing so if we can help it, but not every soldier can be saved, and those who can be, tend to come with greater sacrifice. Which, in most cases, we won't make the sacrifice. One soldier, in the grand scheme of things, is nothing, worthless. Won't make their mark on a war of millions. At least, that's the way command sees it. I think to myself, monologuing. I grab a hold, and pull back my flaps, setting them to take-off settings. I check over all my hydraulic gauges, test my controls, ensure I'm loaded down with proper fuel and ammo. Then slowly push the throttle lever forward. I look once more onto the radio, hearing coordinates repeat, over again. Bismarck's voice. A voice I've never heard until today. Navy affairs never interested me. I think they're a foolish man's errand. Aircraft can sink a ship in one swoop, one bomb, all it takes. We've proven it every time a siren came to close, or an enemy vessel. As my plane begins to move, roaring up the grass patch, up the runway. The desperation in the nation's flagship, in her voice as she repeatedly repeats her coordinates over the radio. But I continue to think to myself, monologuing. The only times it's acceptable to bring about sacrifice, to save a soldier, a lonely soldier, is if that soldier is of high importance to the mission, the grand plan, the long term. Someone of high rank, someone like the general, admiral, the leader or mastermind behind an offensive. Or a spy, carrying crucial information.
That's my sister you are leaving today Admiral.
You can pretend and ignore her calls all you want. But I won't stand around doing nothing. I predict this woman over the radio, firing off on all frequencies abroad, was Tirpitz, booming out angered. A ship posted in Norway, too far away to possibly hope of reaching her sister. I glanced down onto a photograph of my family, of my mother and my father, both killed in the first bombing raid upon our homeland, carried out by the British in the opening of the war. Her pleas of desperation, the voice she used, it falls onto me, similar to the one I carried when I returned home from my farm plots, to find my parents dead, the land reduced to rubble. It's why I joined the Wehrmacht, then Panzer III divisions, and later relocated to the Luftwaffe. The pain I felt had to be extinguished the only way my heart knew how, by protecting and ensuring by my own hands, not another man, woman, or child felt the suffering of their families lost unto a war such as this.
I narrow my eyes, with a shadow casted over my face, as I tilted it forwards. I memorize the coordinates. I reach over, turning the radio off in its entirety, pulling back thrust to 75% of what the motor could push, refusing to touch it again, to conserve as much fuel as I could. As my aircraft took off, and barely cleared the treetops, from the distant tree line, groundspeople notice, one by one my almost immediate course change. I wasn't following my squadron. Instead, I flew northwest, opposed to southeast, as the flight plan had set out for me. The first on the ground to take notice are the young men in the FW-190 squadron, and somehow the boys know what it was I'd planned to do. They watch on in a mix of pride and yet pain. They're watching a suicide at play. A madman flying to his death. They know that plane they're watching slip from view is destined to never return. Hours of flying later. From 15,000 feet, I can see the entirety of the battlefield bellow. Watching as the gigantic titans bellow fight over the seas. Massive shells flying over the waters, the occasional Sea-Fire Spitfire variant strafe Bismarck. Assessing the situation bellow, I know very little of the Navy, how to identify vessels beyond the clear distinct shapes of rigging to identify friendly from enemy. Thus, all I knew for certain was the ship near to the center was Bismarck. And two of the ship's bellow are likely battleships, because their general size is nearly the same as her own, the others, likely cruiser or destroyer. I narrow my eyes, paying mind to Bismarck's desperate attempts to stay out of the crosshairs of the enemy. Author here, yes, I know it's not the Azur lane cannon, that ships when combined Azured with their ship become gigantic, but I think it makes more sense for them to be, literally ship-sized giants, when combined with a vessel. So, that's my head canon, thus these stories canon as well. I glanced down at my fuel gauge, just barely outside of the reserves, according to the needle that is. I had at most 45 minutes. But I'll be using wartime power, WWII, so it'll be closer to 20 to 25 minutes of fuel. I finish my brief assessment of the situation from above, time to make a surprise entrance. I'll only get one shot at this, at changing the course of history. I'm one plane, and one plane alone, on a naval scale should be enough to change the course of a battle, if played right. Running my aircraft on its back, pulling back on the stick, pulling my aircraft into a rolling dive, cutting engine power back to 20% so as not to cause an overspeed scenario.
14 000131111075321000 feet.
I fall out of the sky like a rocket, reaching incredible speeds, switching back on my radio inside the cockpit, grabbing a radio transmitter, shouting into it, finally breaking my hours-long radio silence. Speaking on a frequency that which Bismarck has been primarily broadcasting coordinate changes and SOS. KMS Bismarck, this is First Officer Kurt Otto. I will be providing you air support and air cover. Please, fight as though I am not here, and do not distract yourself. Find an opportunity and escape. The Navy needs its flagship, I spoke, before tossing my radio transmitter/earpiece across the floor. I needed to focus, just as much as she did. Switching my radio back off, grabbing a lever dedicated to wing-mounted 250 kilograms bombs, undetected by the British vessel, who believed the air radar plots on their screen could only be friendly aircraft, which were already buzzing around them. How wrong they were, aiming for one of two battleships. Rodney, at 400 feet. Yanking the wired-up release mechanism. Releasing a set of two.
Yanking the stick back.
My overspeeding aircraft threatens to pull the flaps off my wings. To bring the tail into pieces and rip the prop right off. 400-350-200-100-30 feet. My plane's belly along the tail sections gently brushes along the water before it lifts off into the air, rapidly climbing in a boom and zoom style. My bombs uncontested smash through the deck armor of the battleship's A and B turrets, piercing through, exploding, creating a chain reaction of explosions inside her rigging. The second battleship, alerted to my presence, spun around and fired off fused main gun shells that explode midair ahead and behind me. Shrapnel races out of my aircraft, ripping through the wingtips, but doing little damage. I got off lucky. Then the tracers begin to blanket the skies surrounding. Every British ship firing onto me as I climbed for the clouds above. Distracted from Bismarck, the one battleship in question is struck directly by a devastating attack from Bismarck's main caliber weapons. Leaving only the cruisers or destroyers firing up onto me, lowering the overwhelming number of tracers spraying through the skies, I hear tinks and pinking on my aircraft's metal skin, as some bullets hit at bad angles, causing them to only dent and bounce off. Finally, a 30 or 40 millimeter shell explodes just in front my plane's nose. The shrapnel somehow missed the engine compartment, finds my water cooling lines, causing a coolant leak. Some shrapnel finds the fuel tanks inside my aircraft's wings, causing a fuel leak. I got off lucky yet again. That should have found my cockpit. Breaking into cloud cover, the tracers end, and I lose speed, which bled off from when I was climbing. I level out and regain some speed, but as I do, an aircraft from down below breaks into the clouds and begins firing onto me. I pull back on the stick, throw my engines to 1% and yank the flaps to landing flap. Increasing drag, purposely losing all my speed at once. The Seafire passes beneath me, trying his best to pull up and keep the nose on the target, instead putting himself in front me, passing in front my nose instead. Firing a short burst from my guns, both 20mm and my 7.92 guns find their mark directly into the cockpit. I watched with my own eyes as the cockpit glass is splattered and covered in the blood of my enemy. That 20mm shell exploded inside the poor guy. I watched it spiral out of control out of the skies, punching my aircraft to WWII power, pulling back flaps. I flip my aircraft onto its cockpit, pull back, and dive down from the skies, breaking beneath the clouds with a Seafire falling in a spiral a few hundred feet behind me. Descending onto the other battleship, as I fall from the skies, I watched as the other I'd already hit have another internal explosion rock her rigging. Her main guns begin, one by one, flying off with massive geysers of fire following out the locations that once harbored turrets. She's out of the fight, but still alive. She turns, sprinting out of the battle, trying to get out of range, likely to fight her out of control inferno. Locked in arms with Bismarck, the second one. King George V is ultimately distracted. But the escort vessels are not. Nor are there now alert Seafires. As I dive down onto their remaining battleship, I'm intercepted by Seafires, which fire onto me as I pass down below their altitude. They then dive, giving chase. Meanwhile, Royal Navy cruisers or destroyers lay down anti-aircraft fire onto me, bombarding explosion after explosion near and around my aircraft, which rocked and rattled my Bf-109, which struggled to stay on course. Like before, pulling up at 400 feet. I yanked the last cord inside my cockpit, releasing my final, and belly-mounted 250 kilograms, aiming for the warship's back. Armor center deck where armor is weakest.
Or at least should be. This was the crucial moment.
Pulling up far easier, far quicker than before, with my aircraft no longer loaded down with bombs. I level out at 120 feet. Passing head level with Bismarck, glancing over towards her as the bomb pierced and erupted inside of the warship in question, causing the same chain reaction as the previous ship was dealt, but on a more violent scale, as the eruption happened from within the Azured body, instead of rigging. I look out of my cockpit and stare onto Bismarck, if only for a brief moment. Kicking my radio transmitter and earpiece up off the floor, up into my hand, flicking on the radio.
Well, come on.
Don't just stand there staring. Run. This is your opening. Get into range of air support. Get to France. I shout in a voice lacking patience. Wiping blood from her lip, she spoke. Despite not using her radio at all, I could hear the giant from inside my ship as if clear as day. Right, thank you, as she raced past the burning battleship in her way. She is given chase by the cruisers and or destroyers. I don't know what they are. I'm a pilot, not an admiral. Bullets straddle my plane. Holes appear in my wings. I look back behind me. Seafires.
3 of them.
If it's a dogfight dash, I go silent, repeating the same thing I had done onto the last one, only on a grander scale. All 3 of them make the same mistake as the last. They try to pull up, keep the nose on me, but I'm slowing down too fast to let them, one after the other, putting themselves in my crosshairs with that wasteful mistake. And all three, like the first, are shot out of the sky by 3 short bursts. Spinning my aircraft around, I fly after Bismarck, intent on providing whatever air cover I could. What would then follow is for the next 18 straight minutes. I'd go from a pilot, an ace, to beyond just any ace, destroying every aircraft in my path, catching planes by surprise in the cover of clouds, surviving brushes with death as planes return onto me the same peekaboo treatment inside the covers of cloud. At 8 minutes, my aircraft is screaming, buzzing at me, telling me my main tanks are empty, my 10 minutes reserve tanks, thus far undamaged, are all that's left. My will to fight seems to double, as I know without a doubt in my mind.
I die tonight.
I will either fall from the sky from lack of fuel, and sink, drowning like many men before me have over the channel, in fighting the British. Or I'll die in a splatter of blood, in a burning blaze of glory, as my plane spirals from the skies. But I know my death is sealed. So, any restraints I had, any sense of self-preservation I fought with before, it's gone now. And so, my flight patterns reflect it. Bello Bismarck continues her mad dash for France, for air cover, to get in range. Constantly bombarded by cruisers and destroyers, trying to slow her, so that ships her size can get into range.
So, they can catch up.
She'll never stop. The retreat is inevitable now. Every sea fire that comes in to strafe or bomb the Bismarck has to fight an unmovable force, me. I am not invincible, but I am not easy to kill. When I was young, only a teenager, when aircraft were relatively new, and when glidecraft were becoming a recreational hobby, I took great interest in it, participating and dabbling in it. Thus, when the first Bf-109 rolled off the floor, before it was even a fighter aircraft, I was among the few that got to fly it, test it, put it to the limits. Figure out its weakness, figure out its strength. At the time, an aircraft, a few mistakes, and yet, an aircraft that would kill you at a moment's notice if you stopped paying attention for even a moment. A splendid aircraft. It's only fitting they put me in one, once they took me from the ground combat and put me in the skies. I can do things with this thing that these young British pilots, no, these young pilots abroad couldn't even dream of. So run, try and down me as they might. I'll always come back for more. Until my fuel runs dry, until my ammunition goes empty, you're in my sights, and I will blast you from the skies. But surrounded by an endless wave of enemies, and with only so much ammunition to go around, I'm being forced, my blood is filling the cockpit, holes are finding place in my motors, my reserve tank is leaking, my engine has no more coolant to speak of, my hydraulic lines are broke, manual control is all I have left. I roar out in agony, but only anger seems to escape. I fight and fight, downing 13 sea fires, before finally, I run out of ammo, and my engine begins to sputter, kick, and put out puffs of flame. The leading edges of my aircraft are completely stripped of metal, only the hanging skin of its metal remains. My wings covered on either side with 20 to 30 holes. A mix of oil, hydraulic fuel, and coolant pours in a line out the left side of my airframe. Blood dribbles from my chest, arm, and leg, drenching my fatigues, the ground around me, the seat. Holes in the cockpit, the gauges, the glass. It's done. I glance Bello just outside the cockpit, as my instruments begin to lose life, as the engine putters out, dying, starved of fuel. Bismarck has created a massive gap between her and the cruisers who give chase unto her. I glance over the other side of my aircraft, back from which we'd came. In the far-off distance, another British battleship is trying to close in but isn't fast enough. By my calculations, we're only 25 miles from the air cover that which airfields in France can provide Bismarck. I reach over, flicking on an auxiliary power unit, battery, grab the transmitter, and turn on the radio one last time.
Speaking onto Bismarck.
It's been an honor, Bismarck. Be more mindful of leaving port, without escorts in the future, understand? I doubt another ace will defy orders to rescue you next time. I spoke, sounding more lighthearted than expected, but still stone-like in the moment. Glancing back over her shoulders, a few miles ahead.
I hoof, smiling softly.
For a moment, and only for a moment, speaking in a friendly and genuine tone, transmitting, assuring her not to turn back, not on my accord, else she may get caught by the incoming battleship. Never look back, this was my choice. Not yours. Before ejecting out the cockpit.
Pulling my parachute.
2 sea fires pass on either side of me as I parachute, both of which following my spiraling out of control plane wreck to the ocean bellow.
Descending from the sky for over 7 minutes before I reach the ocean bellow.
Where to my surprise, I am met with a landing ocean-going aircraft operated and owned by the British, that had been distantly scouting, stalking, and following the battle as it moved. I'm surprised they'd even take the time to rescue me, after what I've done,
but, Strich, end of Prologue.